Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday evening, July 8th, 2024. This is a regular meeting of the Gorham Planning Board. Would you please join me in pledging allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Would you mind silencing your cell phone? You don't have to shut it off, but we try to avoid noise. Thank you. First item on the, well, I'd like to do a roll call if you don't mind, please.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Burrows.
Here.
Mr. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Benson.
Here.
Mr. Delaney.
Here.
Ms. Nichols.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the June 17th, 2024 Planning Board minutes. I look to Mr. Burrows, our secretary.
I have read and reviewed the minutes, and I could find nothing erroneous in them.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Anyone else on the board? Any questions? Mr. Frank?
I agree with Mr. Burr's assessment.
Thank you. Is there a motion, please?
Always did he.
All right, I move to approve the minutes from the June 17th Planning Board as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Is there a second?
Mr. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Frank. No other discussion? Any other discussion? We're all set? All those in favor? 5 yeas, abstaining. I was not present. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Chairman's report. I want to apologize to the board and to staff and to the community. I was not available June 17th. We had made some plans to be away back in February before we had a meeting planned, so I wasn't here. So I apologize for my absence. I have nothing else at this time. For this evening, we're looking at a revised agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, in the lower right-hand corner, there's a footer. It should say revised June 26th, 2024. There was a previous agenda published, but I want to make sure that we're all looking at the revised agenda. Thank you. Committee reports. Ordinance Review Committee, Mr. Walsh, anything?
The committee has not met.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, Mr. Frank.
Committee has not met.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Administrative Review.
There have been no staff review meetings this month either.
Wow. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 4 items on this evening's agenda. The first item is a public hearing, site plan and subdivision review, Fairway Commons. Proposal to construct a 14-unit condominium at 93 McClellan Road, Zone South Gorham Crossroads, SGXR, Map 7, Lot 18, and Map 8, Lot 41. The applicant is Triano Properties, LLC, and presented by Jamie Garland, PE of Sebago Techniques. Mr. Garland, here? Okay, well, we have staff first. Thank you. Well, you can meander on up. Thank you. Would staff like to present this?
Mr. Chairman, as was reported, this is a 14-residential townhouse development with associated utilities and infrastructure that would normally go with it. There have been 3 waivers requested, one for the high-intensity soils, one for extension of public sewer, and one for extension of public water. And you'll find those requests on page 3 with proposed motions if you so choose. The project is a adjacent parcel to the multi-phase project that you have seen in a master planning meeting for the same developer, and that project is just down the road. The project is going to be subject to the growth ordinance, so that it's limited to 10 growth permits, and they're aware of that. The proposal is for a 55 plus age-restricted community. And then the project would be most likely developed in 2 phases because of the growth ordinance related to it. The sidewalks have been provided within the development. The applicant is asking for you to consider a fee in lieu for sidewalks to the development. The driveway / road into it is not a private way as you would sort of see it regularly. This is a condominium driveway. So it's a little bit different animal than the private ways, but perfectly accepted in our ordinance. The water and sewer element of this, the applicant is working to determine availability of drinking water through supply wells on site. That is something that is pending at the moment. They're proposing 2 wells, one for potable water and one for fire suppression. There's a connection to public water that is proposed for the development 1 parcel over or 2 parcels over. And yet it is still quite a distance away and part of a different development. There's also a development on Newton Drive, which should at some point get the water closer to this area, but that again is a separate and complete development, which will undergo a completely different review and conversation with you. But it all sort of bears on the same thing in that public water and sewer is part of a conversation with 3 different developments all heading in this direction. So the applicant is proposing that there be 4 septic systems, 1 for each proposed building. That conversation with clustered septic is an ongoing conversation with the town council, and that's sort of a pending conversation still, and we might get an update on that, where that might be at. The lot is in a zone which does not require net residential density calculations, so that would allow for the Class A soil survey to be waived, and that's one of the waivers that's requested. That's the high-intensity soil survey waiver. The applicant has stated that the rear area of the lot would be conservation land with a network of trails on the parcel. They have not yet put that on a plan or envisioned that, but I know during conversations, we had a chat about that, and they have an idea where it might occur, but it's just not showing up on the plan yet. The applicant has stated that they're working to tie their plans into recently completed survey work, which is done by BH2M. The building facade requires 3 different types of materials. That's in the zoning ordinance and is not something that's waivable altogether waivable. The board is allowed to go down to 2 materials if the building design is, I'm going to call it interesting enough, in that you can reduce the number of materials. So you'll have a take a look at the architectural design of the buildings and see what you think. Sidewalks, again, are something that is running inside the site, but to the site is something that you want to chat about. And then with that, I turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Before we jump to you, this is listed as a public hearing, so I'd like to know if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item. Please come to the podium, state your name for the record. Looks like you don't have to go too far. Anyone like to speak to this item? I am closing the public hearing. Thank you. Mr. Garland.
Thank you. Good evening. Again, Jamie Garland from Sebago Technics. We're here on behalf of Nick Trianos from Triano Properties LLC to review Fairway Commons. Fairway Commons is a 14-unit subdivision, a 14-unit condominium project at the former Gorham Country Club, located on approximately 9.95 acres of land of that area. The proposed project will be served by underground power from a pole directly across the main entrance, a public well, which we've recently completed a test on site and achieved 80 gallons per minute, which is a high volume of water for this area, and will meet our needs for servicing the residential units, as well as 4 individual non-engineered septic systems that we believe, and it's open for discussion to see if there is any opportunity here, based on conversations with department staff, may meet the spirit of the non-clustered septic system ordinance. It's not an attempt to subvert the clustered septic system, but provide individual septics to each residential building. The project will require a stormwater law application as well as a permit by rule, which have all been submitted to DEP back in June. As stated, we're seeking 3 waivers for the project. The project is approximately 11,000 feet from the nearest water and sewer main, which in the calculations provided make it at least obvious that septic and wells are more prudent for this project. However, we do know there's a larger project to the east of our existing site that will possibly bring this water and sewer to that area, so we're trying to design this for ease of connection in the future, specifically for water, and then for septic as well, for the sewer as well, if the homeowners decide to connect to sewer in the future if a septic is to fail. The septics are being designed for your standard septic design, 30 years. We have 2 stormwater management BMPs on the site, as discussed, or as we've discussed with town staff, walking paths on the site. I've shown on today's plan a white dashed line that follows an existing cart path, and as well brings it to the existing sidewalks, the proposed sidewalk system for the project. With 10 acres, it is slightly limited for connectivity, but we've brought those into areas where future development would already have an existing walking path. The access is a private condominium driveway. It has been designed to the urban 25-lot subdivision, or condominium, which gives it an esplanade and a sidewalk versus the rural, which would provide just 2 ditches. We feel it gives a little bit more aesthetic to the area versus just having ditching going down the side. Tonight we're here to discuss the project with you and hopefully get preliminary approval. So I go back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. Does anyone on the board have any questions directly for Mr. Garland? Please, Mr. Frank.
Just curious, and this may be a procedural thing. Of course, I lost it now. The waiver for the soil, the zoning district does not require the waiver. Why do we need to issue a waiver for something that's not required?
Crossing my T's and dotting my I's. I believe that we had to file for it to get the waiver regardless, because in the subdivision ordinance it requires it.
Is that a question perhaps for Mr. Norton?
I believe that'd be a question for planning. We're talking about a waiver for
Yes.
soil survey, a high-intensity soil survey?
It's something that the board has traditionally waived to make it obvious that it was okayed by you.
Okay.
I was kind of like to get it on the record.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I've got a question for staff. Would the conversation around sewer and water be different if the project, the larger project to the east was already approved and there was a timeline to establish approved timeline to establish water and sewer there? Or would that not be a consideration that we would take?
It certainly would be.
But because that's not approved yet and there's no timeline, we don't consider that when we're reviewing this adjacent or near adjacent.
It's completely up to you. They've done if I recall, they've done the water supply calculator, which shows the cost to run water here versus having wells, and it is much more than.
Yeah, I think that's based on the current distance, but maybe the applicant has some.
I can only speak to a small portion of the other project, and that project's predicated on the entire clustered
Right.
septic system program being revamped. I can double check, but I think I brought the number down to 5,000 feet, and we were still advantageous to do wells versus water lines. But again, the town would like that, I can provide that.
So that's even with the other project being completed?
I got to
Or-
confirm the distance. I can get
Okay.
you that.
Well, I don't know if that's necessary. I just had I'm curious for the planning board's procedure and our consideration, what are the things that we should be considering specific to public water and sewer? If we know that there are other plans before the board that are going to bring water and sewer closer to the area.
Sure.
Thanks.
Mr. Garland, you mentioned 11,000 feet. Is that from New Portland Road?
I can't remember the road off the top of my name. It's where it currently exists.
Auto body in that
Yeah,
vicinity?
it'll drop to 6,000, 6,500 feet if that new development goes into place. And I believe we're still 1,200, maybe 1,300 approximately. I will note, we have established this to connect to water when it comes.
I think Newton Drive is just about halfway, probably, between Wyman's Auto
Yeah.
Body and McClellan.
Yeah, so it's at 11 and it might be 5,500.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Please, Mr. Walsh.
And thank you. Dave Walsh, I'd like to know a little bit more about the septic plan. And you made reference that it may not fall under the clustered, you got my curiosity. I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
So again, we've had a lot of meetings with staff, and these are just conversations, but the way the code reads currently, and don't quote me because I'm going off memory, is 2 residential facilities or an industrial commercial building can be off 1 septic system. I think, in my opinion, while there are if this was if one of those buildings was a 6-bedroom building, you would consider that non-clustered, but I could have 6 individuals living in there and I'd still meet the same theory. And in doing so, these are all smaller impact. The septic systems the way designed are smaller, non-engineered systems, versus to do a system for this, which would meet the definition of clustered, would truly be an engineered septic system. So again, I think we may have struck a balance, in my opinion. It's just interpretation from the planning board of the clustered septic system. I know we can't ask for a waiver of it, but I think in spirit, we're meeting the intent. In theory, I could put a Walgreens on a 2,000 gallon per day septic system, and that's non-clustered, but I have less than that in septic systems on this site here.
I understand your conundrum here, but I don't believe it just falls to the purview of the planning board at all, does it? You said it's town council? Kind of looking to Carol.
You want me to take this? It's up to you.
There's 2 different viewpoints. One of them is because the other development is so large and they need to put a lot into it, that the clustered system may work better. And it, as a temporary measure, and then it may, they may need to transfer all of those units as they get constructed into the public system.
Yeah.
Because this one is smaller and has less bedrooms, as he said. Less bedrooms would lend this to the clustered system almost permanently. But they are going to pipe it to the entryway so that when they put the public water to the development down the road, they'll be able to connect in for this system, or this development, sorry.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. My memory serves that on the Brackett side, because it's a large subdivision, 2 phases were being requested to have this new type of septic system at such time that they'll have generated enough income, hopefully profit, that they'll then bring sewer in.
That's the hope, yes.
That was my memory, but
That is
please
true.
correct me if I'm wrong. So, but there's no guarantee, even with profit, that they'll bring sewer down if this septic system is successful. But I hear it's non-engineered, and for my engineer friends, can you explain non-engineered, please?
Anything over 2,000 gallons per day is considered an engineered septic system, where you work with a site evaluator and engineer to actually design the leach field, the capacity of the system. You'll do additional studies. It's a sizable field. Just for typical information, a residential home, a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom is roughly 200 gallons per day. So 2,000 is the threshold where you get into engineer, and they want to make sure that it's actually going to function and operate. What we've done is made these more on par for a large residential septic system for each one, for 2 reasons. One, it's going to be a homeowners association. It's easier to manage small chunks of money if something's to go wrong, if sewer doesn't come to the site. And it's also easier for them to bring sewer and connect into the sewer in the future if it does, versus having one large engineered system. If it fails and sewer is not available to that site, that's going to be a large bill.
Thank you. Members of the board.
So in what we're asked to review and approve here, we're looking at a non-engineered system that would service each building or each
Correct.
unit? Each building, okay. And that is not considered a clustered system per the town ordinance, correct?
It's a interpretation of the ordinance.
Okay, that's really wishy-washy.
Since there is no clear direction, from what I would hope from the council, I'm not sure if we're playing tennis, that they're waiting for us to make a decision, but I personally, this is my own personal opinion, please, it's not reflective of the board. I am not happy with this system. I'm worrying about groundwater. If we have piped water, that's fine. Maybe it could be protected. But I'm worried about the groundwater in the well and how stuff flows downhill. I'm worrying about an HOA that I think the contractor, please correct me if I'm wrong, contractor controls that until there's a certain percentage of the development that's been purchased, until those homeowners can take over the assets. And then the debate of how frequently should we have this thing pumped. I mean, I can think of my own family and how frequently should we have ours. Seriously. And here we have a lot of people doing their thing. And I'm looking at where the locations of these septic fields are and the tanks and things, and worrying how the truck has access to it and how often it's pumped, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe it's outside of my review. These are just my personal opinions.
So Mr. Chairman, I'm confused. What would you prefer to see?
In a perfect world, of course, we would like to see water and sewer.
Yeah,
I mean, perfect world.
yeah.
In one or the other, I guess I would certainly like to have public water. But we can't, it's a long stretch. Yes, Mr. Triano.
So I think something we haven't touched on yet is that, and I'm sitting back listening and I just want to add this in because I think it's very important that we're all on the same page. We sat there through 2 meetings, Chuck and Tom. They're both behind, and I don't want to speak for them, they can both tell you themselves, but they are both behind the way that this isn't considered a clustered septic system. That's for starters. I think you can ask them, he's standing right here, sitting right here, but beside that as well, the water getting to lot 6 is very expensive, very expensive. Doesn't matter if Newton gets it to there or not, it's very expensive. We're talking millions of dollars. This project is going to fund the initial water run Then you got the sewer run too for millions of dollars. So we're trying to get the water and utilities to this area. We're trying to hit all the targets here. We're not asking for any favors. We're not asking for anything specific here. The waivers are all waived because they're within parameters to be done. We're not asking for any favors. We're not asking for anything special. We meet the waiver requirements. We meet everything. Not only that, I mean, these systems are very well designed, very well designed. These people won't know the difference whether they're on well or septic. And we have full intentions when we get up to that point on the road to tie them in. And you're talking maybe max 5 to 6 years. These systems are gonna last a lot longer than that. But we can't hit a home run right off the bat. We need a stepping stone here, and the well and septic for this project's a stepping stone. I'm hoping you guys understand that. And like I said, I mean, there's no one better than, Chuck sitting over here to tell you. I think that's a question for him, if this is to meet that or where we're at. I think that's, his parameter within the town.
Any questions from Mr. Triano? Would you like to respond to him?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Just a point of clarification for the board here. The big difference between what's being proposed down near closer to Brackett and this condominium association would be the phase 1 of the, what is it called, down at Brackett Road?
The big one.
Yeah, the big one. What's that? Do you have, what's it? The residences, thank you. The residences that's multiple buildings feeding into one large septic system, as opposed to this, which each building maintains its own septic system, which we feel, staff feels, does not violate the town's prohibition on cluster systems. We feel it meets the spirit of that. So those are the two big differences here. So just want to make sure that that's understood.
You're comfortable with the way it's designed?
Yeah. That's
The
helpful.
actual wording of the ordinance says that no more than 2 residences. And so, unfortunately, residences has not been defined and to make it easy upon us, but we're comfortable that this satisfies the spirit of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess since I started this, I'm very satisfied. I see a benefit to having the individual systems versus any one large system for the whole complex. So, yeah. So I'm in favor. Chuck, I think it's a good explanation. Thank you.
And they are 2 very different things. We're talking about an unengineered system is essentially something that you would find in a single-family home, as opposed to an engineered system, which may have primary treatment, secondary treatment, and a whole slew of other items to go along with it.
Thank you. Colonel.
I was going to say, I'm comfortable going forward with this, and I appreciate your willingness to extend the piping or have it ready to hook up at some point in the future. I appreciate that. Is there some way we can make that a condition of approval or add, make that part of the motion to formalize that?
It does show up on their plan.
It is on the plan.
It
So the
is.
plan we're approving includes that as part of it.
It does.
Okay. I'm
Good.
comfortable.
Good. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm referring to Mr. Bottles, professional engineer for Portland Water District, and he's talking about, after reviewing the proposal, your proposal is clear that this is a private water system fed by private wells, and they'll talk about in the future Portland Water District tying in. So are you designing this system per Portland Water District standards so that it's an easy fix, just disconnect the flanges, boom, we're ready to go? Or is this going to be re-engineered to Portland Water District standards?
The condominium itself will own the water infrastructure on their site, but we'll have a connection point that allows Portland Water District to connect in. The homeowners association will be responsible for their water mains on site. So yes, it will be plug and play, except there'll be a delineation of Portland Water District material and the homeowners association. The best way to describe it would be if your electric power went to a pole with a meter and then went underground. CMP owns this side, you own this side.
But your piping on your side is going to be able to withstand the pressures, blah, 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 AWWA, whoever, Waterworks,
Yes.
we're designing this to.
Yes.
It's going to be okay.
It's engineered.
Fittings getting blown off in someone's basement
There will not be shark bite fittings in the ground. This is going to be designed to engineering standards.
It's happened. It's happened. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Walsh, I interrupted you.
No problem. If you don't mind, I was going to switch topics. Sidewalks, and this is more of a conceptual question for developer and for staff. So the plan, as I understand it, is going to be sidewalks within the subdivision that can come out to McClellan, and then you're going to pay a fee in lieu of, because you got sidewalks basically going to nowhere. Totally get that. However, since we have one lot between this and the big proposed subdivision, do we have a path for, bad word, but will we have a plan to connect and have one common sidewalk connecting the big one to the small one in the future?
The discussion staff had with the applicant was to connect through a path/trail system
That would be nice.
off of the main road, because the main road has some challenges with running a sidewalk along it.
Yeah.
The other development will have sidewalk up nearer to the buildings on the street side, on the main street side. But to run the sidewalk and continue it along and meet up with this had grading challenges.
Sure, you get the hill, yeah.
So there was a thought, since there's already a cartway within this development that was for the golf course.
Is there right-of-way access to that, though?
It's,
Do you have the rights to it? I
it's
mean,
not
you're
a-
crossing a lot in between, correct? That you don't own?
Yeah. In talking with Public Works, we've staged this to allow connectivity when the next piece of the project comes along. And again, Public Works wanted to see the sidewalks away from the road because of the speed as well. So again, it's designed to be plug and play once the next piece comes into mind, but also to note, the end project will not be done before this, if approved, this gets started and done.
So so the plan is to possibly use a path that's in that lot in between, but my question is, do you have rights to do that? Because you don't own that lot. That's my question.
No, this time we don't have rights to that property.
I believe what was being explained is that it would be on the backside of the trail system, which is public land. Did I understand that correctly?
No, actually.
Nothing on McClellan because of,
There's nothing on McClellan, but there's a trail which he was showing earlier. The white line that's on the
Yep.
plan that he has on the easel, which is slightly different. Your plans do not show that because we talked about it after this was submitted. So this yellow dotted line is part cartway that's already there. It's a cart path from the golf carts. And part of it is a connection that they will make to that. Now, it dead ends because the parcel next door they don't own.
Right. That's right. That was my question, is how would you get across that? If you have the connector back there and you don't own the land, then how would you connect?
It may never connect.
Okay. So the answer is we may never have a connection. Because, you're saying you're not going to have one along McClellan because of the grade. And then we may not have one because you don't have rights across that land. So what we're saying is there likely will never be a connection from the big one to the small one.
correct. And I believe the same thing on McClellan, because there's a no man's land in between.
Yeah.
So even if they ran a sidewalk up from the big project to this project,
Yeah, that's just disappointing.
it
That's all.
is, it is.
It is, yeah.
Mr. Triano.
I would like to add to that. So with that being said, we do have full intentions on purchasing that piece of land. We just can't do it until this project's done. So there has to be a separating factor for the time being. So we do intend, there is actually trails already on this lot, and they are fully passable. So it's not like there isn't a connecting trail, but it's not going to be maintained until we take ownership of that in-between parcel.
Okay.
That's the difference. So there is a trail, we would be connecting both. It's not maintainable. But your public works director did not want to take responsibility for more sidewalks. It's outside of your guys' service area in terms of sidewalk buggies for the wintertime. So he thought it would be advantageous for us to put it off the road, because it would cost the taxpayers of Gorham a lot of money to service a sidewalk in that area. So it's actually a lot better to get it off the road. The other thing is too, it gets rid of curbing, it gets rid of drainage work, it gets rid of catch basins, it gets rid of moving the ditch back 4 feet. There's a lot of cost there for both the town and us, and we're trying to avoid that. So it's not necessarily a disappointment. It needs to be considered a investment on both the town and the developer to get it to where it needs to be. So it's more of just a timing thing versus a not going to happen thing.
All right, so it's within your vision.
It's 100% within our vision. We
Yeah.
just can't show the entire vision at this point because it's two separate projects. Let's put it this way, if that clustered septic system doesn't get approved at the council level, the bigger project might not ever happen.
Got it.
It doesn't need to happen on this project. We want it to. We fully intend to, because we are using the funds here to put utilities in the area, but we need that clustered septic system to happen in order for viability of the Lot 6 Residences at Gorham Country Club project. So it's a teamwork thing between the town and us, and we're trying to make it work. We're doing everything we can with the council. We're doing everything we can with you guys. We're doing everything we can with the planning department and everybody in between. I think everybody's very happy. I mean, we had a great meeting. We've had several great meetings. And like I said, we're here for approvals, and we're just trying to see where it can get us. And the sooner we get this going, the sooner we can get some headway towards the other project.
Good, I appreciate the input.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, please, Mr. Frank.
Russell Frank. The septic for this project, it seems pretty well, I think, Chuck, that he understands it and it's an okay thing. If the planning board, if we approve this, would that carry any meaning or any weight to a different type of system, like for the big country club thing? Maybe that's almost a procedural thing. No, it would not, because they're two different types of engineered systems. So if we're...
I'll let Chuck weigh in on that on procedural.
So are you speaking specifically to the residences down on the Brackett Road side? That other larger project? Yeah, so there are two different types of systems. This is an unengineered system, which is below that 2,000 gallon per day limit. The residences, I believe it's 56 units going to a clustered system. Is that what it is? 56? 59 units going to a single system in multiple buildings. So that would be classified as a clustered system. So it would have to be designed differently than this.
So two very different animals.
Correct.
So
Correct.
by
Very.
sort of like talking about both of them together, I think just creates a little cloud of confusion.
Correct. Yeah. These are more residential septic systems like you'd see at anybody's home.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's the board's pleasure. I have a couple of things I'd like to bring up. If you don't mind, great detail on the drawings, a lot of text, a lot of stuff, information. I really, really appreciate the detail. I have a couple of questions I'd like to refer to, please. Page 6 of 14 is a plan view of all the water lines.
Yes.
Page 9 of 14 is showing where all the trees are going to be located. Regretfully for me, all the trees are on top of all the water lines. You know, people can joke and all this other stuff, but I do know tree roots can grow through a pipe. So I would hope, at least from the landscaping side, somebody might look at that and make sure for future generations that those trees and those roots will no way impact all those little sensitive water lines. It's just an opinion.
We will be making amendments to the plan.
Page 6 and page 9.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good pickup.
I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
I move to grant a waiver from Chapter 3, Section High-Intensity Soils because its zoning district does not require new net residential acreage calculation.
Thank you, Colonel. Is there a second?
Mr. Frank will second.
Mr. Frank, thank you, Mr. Frank. Is there any discussion? I think we are completely full of all the information we need on this. Thank you. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. One down.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
I move to grant a waiver from Chapter 1, Section 127D, 11A, extension of public sewer because the site is located more than 1.75 miles from the nearest public sewer.
I'm going to look to staff, if you don't mind. Just hold that thought. Where do we come up with 1 3/4 miles? About? Are we comfortable with that?
Yes, it's actually 500 feet. If it's more than 500 feet away, you can grant a waiver.
I'm just looking at the distance. If it's going to be recorded as a motion and seconded, is 1.7 miles
Accurate.
accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm
It
sorry.
certainly is. Much more than that.
Wow.
There's multiple directions, but.
Approximate, how's that? Approximate? Thank you. I
Fair.
apologize for interrupting. Is there a second on Colonel Benson's motion?
Dave Walsh, second.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any discussion on this? We all happy? All those in favor, please. Is that 6 yeas?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. How are we doing? Keeping up?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move to grant a waiver from Chapter 1, Section 127D, 11A, extension of public water because the site is located more than 1 mile to the nearest proposed public water connection.
Do I have a second?
Dave Walsh, second.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there any discussion on this? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. It's a few waivers out of the way. Anything else from Mr. Garland or staff? Any other details? If not, we have a couple of motions on page 26. It's your pleasure to proceed.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve the preliminary subdivision plan for Fairway Commons located on map 7, Lot 18, and map 8, Lot 41 in South Gorham Crossroads zoning districts based upon findings of fact and conditions of approval as written by the town planner. And we had no amendments, is that correct? No.
No formal.
May I make a suggested amendment to add in the site plan? Subdivision and site plan approval. Friendly amendment by staff.
So based upon, say that again, Carol?
Site plan,
Preliminary subdivision.
subdivision and site plan approval.
So it would be based upon findings of fact and conditions of approval and subdivision and site plan as written by the town planner.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second?
David Burrows, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Any more discussion? Anything we want to filter out? Any confusion? It's a big deal. This is a big deal. Whatever is cast in stone this evening is going to have ramifications for other things. I want to make sure we're all
No,
happy.
I think the applicant submitted a good package.
I do have one.
Yes, please, Mr. Burrows.
Carol
Please.
mentioned, David Burrows, Carol mentioned that there is provision in this package that commits the developer to connecting to water and sanitary sewer when conditions support that, or meaning to that effect. So where in this package is that specifically?
The utility lines are within the driveway, ready to connect when the public infrastructure comes in front of it.
So the fact that they're in the plans, does that commit them to connecting? I'm getting a yes from Mr.
You can ask for a condition of approval for connection when it runs up that way.
ask for a condition of
Condition
approval?
of approval.
You can add a condition of approval.
Oh, add a condition, I'm sorry.
Because just because the infrastructure, you're correct, just because the infrastructure is in the road doesn't mean the residents of that subdivision will actually want to connect at some point.
And it's up to the residents. It's not up to the developer.
Would be up to the HOA to
So we
connect.
can't really commit the developer to something that the homeowners have control over.
At some point, yes.
My feeling.
So we need to let it go, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I
That-
don't think the developer wants to run a pipe up and have everyone say, no, we don't want to connect. I'm thinking.
It could happen. It could happen.
No, they very well could. I mean, the HOA may decide that they do not want to go to that expense if the system is healthy and working fine.
Mr. Burrows, you happy with that?
Yeah, I am happy with
Great,
that.
great.
No need to add a condition.
Anyone else? We had a motion, Mr. Walsh, seconded by Mr. Burrows. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you.
Just so you know, they have to come in for final subdivision approval.
Sure.
So this was preliminary.
One step at a time.
We all set? Moving along, we have item 2, which is a discussion, site plan amendment, Cottage Advisors, Maine Limited Liability Corporation, Pheasant Knoll impact fees, a request to waive school impact fees for the subdivision zone CZ Caspazac, map 46, lot 11.4, represented by Robert Gorgitis. Is that gentleman here? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Georgitis, I believe.
Georgitis, I apologize, with Maine Planning Associates.
Yeah, unfortunately, Bob Georgitis can't make it.
Time out.
Excuse me, Chair. Mr. Chairman, if I may, since I am a resident of Pheasant Knoll and also president of one of the condo associations and have some ongoing business with Mr. Hall, I would ask the board if I should recuse myself from this discussion.
I'd entertain a motion to allow Mr. Walsh to leave the bench.
I move to allow Mr. Walsh to recuse himself and leave the bench.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Is there a second?
A second?
Thank you, Colonel. Any discussion? Conflict of interest, perhaps? All those in favor? 5 yea, 1 abstention. Thank you.
Enjoy.
Now, sir, please.
Sorry for that. My name is Howard Hall. I'm the principal of Cottage Advisors, ME LLC. Bob Georgitis couldn't make it tonight. So I'm here to answer any questions you guys have. I think the memo that the staff put together sums up everything. We had some differing opinions about the classification of the impact fees. We believe that we should have been under elderly and/or congregated units because we were an age-restricted community, which the impact fee would be a different rate. The code office took a different opinion, said, no, we don't fall into that the classification. So we were being charged a 3-bedroom home when we know that we don't have the amount of residents that a 3-bedroom home has based on the town's calculations. So based on the ordinance, it said that we can come back and request a different use under the residential guidelines. So that's what we put forward, and I went to council. Council said that they wanted to send it back to staff, which they did, and now we're back in front of you because you're the body that decides if this new classification for a use qualifies to be put into the ordinance, and if so, we would support it.
Thank you. I apologize. I appeared to put the cart before the horse. I should have asked for staff to send this off, so hold those thoughts. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hall summarized the process that led to where we are tonight very well, I think. I'll add that if you recall at the April 1st Planning Board meeting, the board considered the middle school impact fee, which is assessed at 10% of the rate, and elected not to waive that. So what's before you tonight is the other impact fee that the applicant had requested be reviewed, that is
for recreation. So the memo that we produced includes information the board asked to be pulled together from census data that shows what the true number of residents per household is for 2 different age brackets. We looked at 55 plus and 62 plus. Now these are the 55 plus communities, so that's what I encourage you to focus on this evening. So the data that we looked at is from the 2022 public use microdata, which is a census product that can be used to answer some specific questions that aren't listed on the website, allowing us to put together 2 specific points of data here, which is the number of people, the average household size for a given age of householder. So if we looked at that, what we came up with were the data set that includes interior Cumberland County, which includes Gorham. So that's Cumberland County excluding Westbrook, Portland, and South Portland for 55 plus. That's 1.85 persons per household. It actually tracks very closely to the state as a whole, which is 1.83 persons per household. I did, at the request of the chair, pull the numbers for the rest of Cumberland County, which is Westbrook, Portland, South Portland. It actually is lower, it's 1.72. For whatever reason, Gorham and interior Cumberland County track the state as a whole more closely. Given that, it appears that it's a solid basis rationale for the impact fee, which is important when assessing impact fees. There needs to be a rational connection between the actual impact that's being funded. So if you look to the motion, it references the per capita value, which is the base value that gets multiplied by to assess the fee. So if you take the $980 per capita basis times 1.85, you get 1,813, which is somewhere in the middle between what was being assessed previously and the lowest possible assessment, which so it's sort of a compromise balance point, and it's backed up by sort of a rational analysis here. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions.
Thank you. I apologize for cutting you off. Yes, the data does complete, and I did ask for that Portland, South Portland, Westbrook to be included. So thanks you for that was just this morning. So thanks you for jumping on that. Look to the board.
Thank you, Damien, for comprehensive information. Thank you. Very helpful to us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Delaney.
Well said. I like the numbers. Well researched, well presented.
Thank you, Mr. Frank.
I'm good with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Well, we'll get to the motion and all that perhaps. Any other discussion? Any questions? On page 4, we have a motion perhaps. Would anyone like to,
I'm ready to do the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows.
Okay, David Burrows. I move that for future permitted dwelling unit construction, that the residential and open space impact fee shall be $1,813 per dwelling unit, based on the finding from the U.S. Census data that the average household size for housing with a household age of 55 or older is 1.85 per household and a $980 per capita basis.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Is there a second?
I'll second. Mr. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Sorry, Mr. Delaney, I saw his hand go up just a nose ahead of you. A couple of questions, if you don't mind. So how long will this fee be static? Are we talking a few years? Are we talking until the next go-around, until there's some metric that says?
This, the recreation open space impact fee was just recalculated in the last 2 years.
Okay.
The entire ordinance got reconfigured.
Okay.
So this is an update that's only 2 years old.
Okay.
We're updating specifically for this instance, but just so you know, that the numbers are within the last 2 years.
We should be good for a few years.
We should be.
Yeah, I'm a cost of consumer price index type of person. I want to make sure there's some teeth in there that allows us, unfortunately, to increase those fees, but it goes across the board. Mr. Burrows and Mr. Frank, is there any other discussion? Any other questions for staff?
No, I would echo that comment that if there's anyone from the town council listening, that the impact fees should be pinned to the CPI or some other number so that they keep up with inflation. So I hope that the town takes some action to do that.
Thank you, Colonel. Any other discussion? All those in favor of this motion? Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Mr. Walsh, would you like to rejoin us?
Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on, got to get my papers in line here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is item 3, discussion, final subdivision review, 79 Day Road subdivision, a request for approval to divide a parcel split by previous landowner without sale lots 1 and 2, map 23, lot 7, zone urban residential expansion. The applicant is represented by Andrew Morrill, PE with BH2M. I'd like to kick it off and go to the staff first this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as the board may recall, this item was before you twice before for sketch plan review in September 2023, and then preliminary subdivision review May 2024, where preliminary approval was granted. So therefore, they're before you for final approval this evening. They're looking for approval based on some additional information they've provided. I would encourage the board to check with the applicant on a few things, items of note. One being that a Class A soil survey is required of this in this zone. It cannot be waived unless public water is provided, and it's they're looking to have private on-site well water. So the applicants provided what appears to be a Class B soil survey. So look for more information on that one. They've included a waiver motion. The board does have the ability to waive nitrate plume analysis, and the third-party engineer has looked at that request and concurs that that waiver appears to be in order if the board chooses to grant it. And, with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Morrill.
Good evening, Andy Morrill, civil engineer with BH2M, also here as the applicant. Damon did a good job introducing that. We were last before you guys on May 6th when we got preliminary subdivision. The plans haven't changed significantly since you've seen them. We did complete a high-intensity soil survey by Mark Hampton. That is a Class B survey that we've provided to you guys. Parcels of this size, that is typically the approach that's taken. Happy to discuss that with the board this evening. We think a Class B high-intensity soil survey is more than adequate for this, considering the small area that we're looking to develop, and we've done a Class B survey for this entire piece. The board, as the board knows, there's 3 classifications of soil surveys, Class A, B, and C. It's the level of accuracy, if you will. A level B survey, say, may require 7 test pits on the site. A level A survey may require 12 test pits throughout the site in order to assure the accuracy of the survey. We feel a Class B survey is enough if that's something the board is willing to consider. I don't know if a waiver is needed for that or what the approach is. I know in the past, we've typically waived that to a Class B survey. So we can discuss that further in detail. The only other real changes that have happened to the plan since you guys saw them was the applicant is now proposing underground electric as is required in the ordinance. The applicant provided financial capacity. We provided an erosion and sediment control plan. As Damon discussed, we are still looking for the waiver on the nitrate analysis. I know Wright Pierce has weighed in on that, as you can see in the memo. We provided the water extension calculations for the parcel, which show that the extension of public water is not feasible for this project. The applicant is proposing drilled wells, as the board knows, and we've provided the plans for final subdivision approval. Those are the majority of the changes that have happened. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll throw it back to you and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow.
Yep.
Members of the board. Walsh, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Dave Walsh. I want to follow up on Andy's comments regarding the soil survey and I guess turn to staff and say what is a Class B acceptable? I mean, this is a fairly two small lots.
Well, the answer is it does not meet the ordinance requirements, Mr. Walsh.
So it's not waivable?
No, not according to the ordinance.
Wow.
No discussion required.
I can name 5 projects that has been waived in the last couple of years.
It has no merit on this.
If I may add, there are provisions for waiving that requirement if a parcel is located in a zone that does not require net residential acreage calculations. The board may waive that, or if public water is provided. Those are the two situations where the requirement may be waived according to the ordinances.
So within the last year, Lindsay Hastings and Jack Riley, both of those projects, the board waived the requirement for a high-intensity soil survey of the Class A nature and allowed a Class B high-intensity soil report, which was what was provided.
I can't speak to that.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
anyone?
Yeah, we're caught here. If the ordinance is, the ordinance is, but, if you're asking, are you asking staff to look into that? Or asking us to ask staff to look into that?
I mean, if the staff is saying it's not waivable, then I can have Mark Hampton complete a couple additional test bits, and this will be a Class A high-intensity soil survey.
What's happened in the last few years, which could be contributing to this, is that the zoning has changed in this area. And so right now it's urban residential expansion, which requires the net residential density calculation. Previously, they might have been a different zone. Well, we can do a double check to make sure.
That would be great.
Mr. Morrow, I refer to Mr. Hampton, a registered land surveyor or a scientist. If the gentleman knew that it wasn't waivable and a Class A was required, I'm just curious why he opted to just do a Class B. Was he instructed to do so, or?
Class B is the typical approach for a high-intensity soil survey. Class A is rarely used. That's the approach that was taken. So if the board feels and the staff feels that this is non-waivable, then I guess maybe we would ask to be placed on the consent agenda at the next agenda. I did talk to Hampton Associates today, and he was confident that the soil lines won't change as a result of this, but we won't know until that's completed. So I would ask to be placed on the consent agenda, and once we provide that Class A high-intensity soil survey at the next meeting, we can move forward.
You're working very, very hard for this project, and there's no doubt, and a lot of respect for that. I just think you had perhaps some influence to tell him Class A was required, right out of the gate, and this evening, we'd be just moving right along. So I regret that, hearing both sides, Class A is required, non-waivable, and unless the board, certainly, please chime in. I'm going to say he should have known better. That's my personal opinion. I'd like to hear from anyone else, please.
Kind of feel the same way. I mean, it would be, that's what was my question when I read it, that a Class B was done and a Class A was required, so, but it's just going to cause a delay. I think, though, he has proposed a solution, that if everything else is in order, we could put this on the consent agenda and then move it along. Or could it be done as a condition of approval? And approved tonight?
It could be.
Is the staff preference to have a consent agenda? Because we haven't reviewed any of the other materials right now. There may be other things in here.
Maybe, so let's wait, and if you feel it needs to be a condition of approval, that would be workable.
Thank you. Sound reasonable?
Yes.
Anyone else now? I'm looking through the findings of facts, et cetera, et cetera. I had no mock-ups, unbelievably so. It was prepared very well. There's a lot of yellow that are going to be conditions of approval. Any questions for Mr. Morrow? I don't want to keep him up there all night.
Mr. Chairman, are we going to, was there a waiver request for the nitrate plume analysis?
Correct, yes.
Yes, so,
That would be on page 2.
yes. Would we like to handle that?
Is that your pleasure?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, would you entertain a motion for move to grant a waiver to Ali Omer and Carmen Schneider, excuse me, from the requirements to complete a nitrate plume analysis for the proposed subdivision at map 23, lot 7.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
I second it.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Is there any other discussion on this waiving of the plume analysis? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Anything else in your packet that you have questions about, concerns? On page 16, we have two motions. And I believe there was a discussion perhaps of a third that might be sending it to consent agenda, but I look to the board.
I'm comfortable that this could be a condition of approval to get the Class A survey to be done in lieu of the Class B that's already been submitted.
I support that also.
Yes.
Seems unanimous. Do you want to, Mr. Walsh, since you did that so eloquently, would you like to?
I kind of walked into that one, didn't I? All
If you
right.
remember all of that and throw it into a motion, please.
Yeah, let me say, all right. So, Mr. Chairman, move to grant final subdivision approval for 79 Day Row subdivision located on map 23, lot 7 in urban residential expansion zoning districts based upon findings of fact and condition of approval as written by the town planner and amended by the planning board for a condition of approval to, for applicant to submit a Class A soil survey to replace the existing Class B soil survey.
Well said, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. So we're okay with this, except that we want to have some teeth in this by having a Class A survey. Anyone else? Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Morrow, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your patience.
Yes, thank you.
Oops. We okay? Ladies and gentlemen, next is item 4, discussion of pre-application subdivision plan. Maker Buildings Limited Liability Corporation, Shirley Newton 55+ community. A request for approval to construct an 84-unit condominium community for residents 55 and older. Map 8, Lot 10, Zone South Gorham Crossroads, SGXR. The applicant is represented by Andrew Morrow, PE with BHWM. Members of the board, I would request you grant me permission to recuse myself. I live on Newton Drive, and this is just...
I move to permit James Hager to recuse himself from this application.
Dave Walsh, second. Yep.
You want to vote on?
You want me to run the vote?
Sure,
Okay.
sure, sure.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hager. Let's turn it over to the staff, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a condominium association development that is proposed to be 28 triplex units for a 55 and older community. This is the second time it's been before the board. Previously, it was for duplex units and a lesser number. They are proposing to run water to this area, so they have increased the number of units to accommodate the cost of that. It is in compliance with the comprehensive plan, and the zoning has been changed to conform to the comprehensive plan. So now it has gone from urban residential expansion to South Gorham Crossroads, which that's what the comprehensive plan called for. The South Gorham Crossroads zone allows for unlimited residential density in order to accommodate the running of utilities. The application would go through both subdivision and site plan because it is multi-unit development. There is a requirement for sidewalks because this is located in the pedestrian overlay zone, and so they have that requirement. There is a plan for a private way or several private ways, and so each one of those would need its own plan so that you can review them under the private way standards. The access to adjoining land is to be provided by a 50-foot right-of-way for the roads that are proposed to be public. And we'll have a discussion, I'm sure, about the public water and the running of that and the proposal and the thoughts behind that at the moment. We haven't talked about it in depth, but you can ask for a little more information about that. Let's see. What else that stands out? With that, I'll turn it over.
Okay, thank you. I want to remind everyone we did do a site walk of this site last year, and I also did we have a public hearing on this already?
No, it's been in sketch plan for this particular development.
So we have not taken. I know we took some public comment while we were on the site walk, but
Yes. This parcel has had a number of conversations over the past 4 years.
Okay.
But in the latest iteration, the site walk that you just had has cleared up a lot of the detail that you need to know.
And the outcome for tonight is only a discussion. We're not looking for any type of a vote or
Correct.
approval. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. So happy to hear from the applicant. Thank you.
Good evening, Andy Morrill, civil engineer from BH2M, here representing Maka Builders. So as Carol said, we were before the board back in September of 2023 for a sketch plan review. At that time, we also had a site walk as part of that. At the time, when we were before the board then, it was 63 condo units that were duplexes, 55 and older. As Carol said, since then, the applicant has rezoned the parcel, is now coming back with, within the South Gorham Crossroads District, which has some different density, which the applicant is proposing 84 triplex units, if you will. So you're not allowed to do single family or duplex units. You need to do 3 or more units per building. So we've got 3 units per building, 28 total buildings. As Carol said, the applicant intends to extend public water to the parcel. Right now, again, this is just a sketch plan. We haven't gotten too far into the design, but right now we're thinking down Brackett Road, down Newton Drive, throughout the development to serve public water to this project. Certainly, we'll be dealing with the town and Portland Water District as we go through the process, but that's the thinking as of right now. I know we talked about this when we were before the board the last time, there are some right-of-way issues at the end of both Newton and Shirley. We are proposing the looped road, if you will, that connects Newton and Shirley to be a public road. Our hope is that, that'll eliminate the dead end on both roads and make it a public road all the way through. Will also alleviate some problems with portions of the right-of-way that it's kind of who maintains it and who owns it, that type of stuff. So this is a solution, I think, that works for everybody to kind of resolve a lot of those issues. So we have met with staff several times throughout the rezoning process. One of the things everybody agreed on was that it was beneficial to come back to you guys to have another sketch plan, to get you guys' input, to get input from the abutters, to get everybody's concerns before we start jumping into the design of this project. So we're here tonight to take some direction from the board and the abutters, and we welcome any comments, and we'll certainly take them into consideration when we go into the design phase. So, Mr. Chairman, back to you. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any discussion or questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Frank.
Andy, on the your basically one-page thing, you write here that the South Gorham Crossroads District also requires the units to be multifamily, meaning more than 3 units are required in each building. And your next sentence said the applicant has redesigned the project to include 84 units within 28 3-unit buildings. Now, the preceding sentence, you say meaning more than 3 units, but yet in your next sentence, you're describing 3-unit buildings.
Yeah, the sentence, the first sentence should have, you're not, in the South Gorham Crossroads District, you're not allowed to do single family or duplexes. So anything needs to be 3 units or more. So that first sentence was inaccurate.
Okay. That's what I was hoping you would say.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, so Dave Walsh, couple questions, Andy.
Yeah.
And this is just more curiosity than anything. So you're 84 units, 55 and older. I'm guessing that the market for that must be fairly good. But then again, Gorham has the growth ordinance. If the growth ordinance was not in place, would developers still be going for 55 and older, or would it be open age?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if the applicant wants to come up and answer that.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like,
Yeah, all right.
That's something that-
And that's fair. That's
Yep.
fair. So, all right, 84 units now, so more than when we saw the last time, more than when we did the site walk. Based on Damon's calculation, if I did my math right, that would mean at 1.82 residents per unit for 55 and older, we're looking at, roughly 153 people. Is there a plan, is there a requirement to do any type of traffic study because for additional cars coming out of both Shirley Newton out on to Brackett?
I don't believe this technically would trigger a traffic study from the town, but I think that's certainly something as a board and that I would like to discuss with the board. I think 84 units in an existing residential area, I think it makes sense to do some kind of traffic review and submit that to the town.
I think that would be great, and as well, to piggyback on that, are there any improvements that the applicant would need to be making on Shirley and Newton, and maybe Chuck, you have to weigh in on that question, to accommodate another 153 residents in this area?
I know we certainly, throughout the process, have talked to Public Works, and they have concerns about that same issue, especially knowing that a water main is going to be constructed throughout Newton Drive. So I think there was some discussion of what needs to happen during construction, what needs to happen pre-construction versus post-construction for those roads. I don't think those answers have been worked out yet, but I think there's probably something there that needs to be looked at as part of the review process. I know at one point, I think Public Works was talking about some kind of an overlay on either Newton or Shirley, depending on where the water main came through. So I think those discussions are certainly something that would happen as we move forward. I'm curious to see what Chuck has to say about it.
Yeah, I believe once this goes further through design, the applicant would need to provide those traffic numbers to us, and we would review them with the applicant and make a decision on what would be needed. And I can't speak specifically to Public Works, but I know that it's typical for Public Works to ask for some sort of overlay or repair of roads that were affected during construction.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, Frank.
Timeline-wise, do you have a sort of a notion of how long it'll take for all these things to be built? And so, yeah.
That's a loaded question. So there's a lot of factors involved in that. I suspect the project would probably be phased from I don't know if it'll be phased for just construction or if it'll be phased for approvals. There will certainly be some phasing to the project, both from a permitting point of view and a construction point of view. So a lot of that's going to be, the timeline of building out the project is going to be market driven, right? I know the applicant's intent is once this sketch plan process is, we've got direction from the board this evening, is to kind of move forward with the design right after this. So there's certainly a lot of permitting required to get this project up and running. So I don't think I can give you a real accurate number of when that could be.
Yeah, I didn't mean to try to pin you down to a real number. It was just like, what's the hope for?
I think the hope is as soon as possible, right? I know that's what they're going to tell me is, they'd like to get something working as soon as possible. But we all know there's a lot of permitting and a lot of steps that are needed to get to that point, and we're kind of at, step one. So we've got a long process to go, and then I suspect it'll be a phased construction, where maybe, a portion of it is the first phase, and then there's a second phase, and again, depending on market conditions, it'll depend on how quickly those get built.
Mr. Chairman, so Andy, just to piggyback on that, so obviously, from our recollection when we walked the site, and it's got there's some topography to deal with on the site.
Yes.
And obviously phasing, you've got a lot of infrastructure there, particularly if you're going to put in a public road and then build off of that. Can you just talk about your stormwater plan for the site?
Yes, so based on the size of the site and the number of units, the full build-out of the parcel will require a site location permit. So we're going to be looking at doing both quantity and quality treatment for stormwater and DEP permitting for the project. So we'll be required to treat 95% of the impervious area and 80% of the developed area, collect it all into a stormwater facility, and most likely discharge it to the wetlands on the parcel. I suspect, knowing the topography of this site, that you're going to have a number of stormwater facilities kind of mishmashed throughout the site in order to be able to make the grades work. I don't see us being able to take a large portion of the site and directing it to one area. I think you'll probably see 4 or 5 different stormwater facilities throughout the site.
Yeah, back in my recollection, that seems right. And then one other question, is there any plan for open space and any form of trail easements? And if so, would those be open to the public or just the residents?
I think we're certainly planning some improvements into the open space. What that's going to be yet, I don't know for sure. We'll certainly put something together when we come forward for preliminary, but I believe we're thinking this is for the residents of the project, not necessarily for the general public. Yes. Does the board have a preference on open space improvements that they would like to see?
I think when you come back with the plan, with the preliminary plan, is the right time to have those conversations.
Great.
Well, I'm just saying that the request from the conservation, and you saw the notes from the Conservation Commission, they would be in favor of public access if at all possible.
Okay.
Certainly, any access to existing trails or something. I mean, those are always things that the board's looking for, as you know from being here before. A procedural question for the staff. Is there, I'm assuming there will be a requirement for a public hearing at some point for this development?
Because this is site plan, it would.
Yes. Okay. The applicant, you mentioned wanting to hear from the abutters, and this is not a public hearing, but we could open for public comment. But I'd like to have consensus from the board if we want to take public comment. Is that accurate, that you were interested in hearing from the abutters?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some residents here. We would,
So I think
we would love to hear from them, and if they have some input on our layout, we'd love to know that before we dive into the design, if
Sure.
the board's okay with that.
Yeah, I'd like to invite anyone who would like to comment to come up. I'd rather not get into back and forth questions, but if you have concerns or something you'd like the developer to consider, please state what those things are, and if you have a question, we'll write it down and try to get an answer for you. Just state your name and address when you come up.
Hi, my name's Tom Pittman. I'm 26 Shirley Lane. Thank you for the 153-person calculation, Mr. Walsh. So 153 people receiving public water is one thing, but treating that with septic systems is another. So that's just a concern that I have, that water that's coming in will be adequately treated, because I guess what I noticed was the density sort of encroached around that wetland area. That was a big change from the last proposal. So, those units look like they are right on the line of that wetland. So, not being a civil engineer, I don't know about septic design, but that is just a concern that I have.
You're referencing the wetlands in the inner
Correct.
inner part. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
So these units.
Sure.
These units.
Anything downhill from those. Yeah.
So those are just a bit more densely packed in there than were before, and there are more of them. So that's my concern. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment?
Richard Blake, 27 Newton Drive, right here. And I read in the proposal there that one of the things they would do would be overlay the present roads, perhaps. That's not adequate. Our roads are so small now that we practically have to stop, let another car go by. The roads, both Shirley Lane, Newton Drive, are going to have to be brought up to some kind of a standard to ensure that we can all get by each other. And it's a good thing you're going to take a look at the traffic, because getting out on the Brackett Road is getting tougher and tougher all the time. You multiply all the people in there, so many units, twice the cars, everybody going out once or twice a day. It's really going to impact, especially, I'm no spring chicken, but as everybody gets older, they get a little more shaky on the road. Okay, that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Any other comments? Well, thank you to the two that we had that came up. I appreciate that. Based on those comments, did that bring up any more questions from the board? Mr. Morrow, anything else?
No, I don't believe so. If the board doesn't have anything else, we've got some good direction, and we've got a lot of work to do, so.
Staff?
One additional thing I'll direct Andy to is the multifamily standards that are in the general performance standards section.
Okay.
Thank you. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your help.
Mr. Hager, we welcome you back to your seat.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, everyone. Moving along, any other business? There's a few more things I have to say, but any other business to come before us? Staff or other side? Announcements from my side. The Open Space Master Plan Committee met Thursday, June 7th. We had 7 consulting firms that have submitted proposals to us. Our first task was to rank rate and by comparative score the 6 different categories that were assigned to them. We're going to meet again this Thursday, July 11th at 6 p.m. to review the scoring and ask for 4 consultants to come back in for interviews. That date has not been determined at this point. That's all I have. Anyone else? Colonel, nope. Any other board? Staff, anyone? Thank you to Ben Dyke. Thank you to the staff. Thank you for the audience for participating. Thank you to the board. Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second. Mr. Walsh, second, Colonel Benson. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.